Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
Views and opinions expressed by hosts and guests on Patriots with Grit do not necessarily reflect those of Patriots with Grit LLC, its founders, and owners.
Get ready for truth bombs and guidance from conservative leaders and entrepreneurs from God-fearing, freedom-loving, truth-telling, patriotic Americans. Welcome to Patriots with Grit. Now let's jump into today's episode with your host, Darren Ross.
We have so much to unpack on today's show, Randy. People are all excited. You know, Donald Trump's been in office now for, going on 2 weeks. And everybody's all excited about how he's going to give the power back to the people.
Well, and the sad part is, if you really understand, he can't do that because we had the power in the first place.
We have an awesome guest today on, Jeff Calhoun. He's been a guest with us before. He's going to unpack all this step by step. Randy, he has a really good accent, from the South. And with that and his way of unpacking and making this very simple, I think people are going to really understand it, that when he gets done with today's episode, we're going to really find out that we have a path that's a good future, and people are going to understand it a lot better. So, Jeff, thanks so much for joining us here again on Patriots with Grit. We appreciate you coming on and sharing and doing all things well in the great state of Kentucky.
Yeah, Randy, Darren, I've really been looking forward to seeing you guys again. And, and I was thinking about this week, because we talked the last time, and I know that you guys, really felt this calling to do your part to get the message out and to, wake people up, inform people, mobilize people, encourage and inspire, patriots. And you were doing this when we were living in the midst of 4 years of incredible tyranny. The censorship, the authoritarian control measures, the thousands and thousands of service members that were dishonorably discharged because they refused to take an experimental vaccine, which they were absolutely privileged to do under the law. And so we've had a lawless government for a long time, but I just really appreciate that you guys are staying the course and that you're doing the work. So thanks for doing that. And thanks for having me. So Trump, tell me, just give me the 30,000 foot view of what the last 6 months has been like for you guys, just watching everything that we've seen happen.
Well, for us, it's been a whirlwind. It's like, what are we going to cover next? Who are we going to get on? Who's going to share truth? Who's going to put their own spin on it? You had the attempted assassination of Trump. What else, Randy?
Oh, I just think about as it got closer to election time, just that anxiety that they were going to try and steal it again. And then once he won, the 20th of January couldn't get here quick enough.
After he won, it was kind of like the air was let out of the balloon. After the election was over, I don't know about you, but it just felt like the excitement kind of dwindled a little bit.
Well, I think the thing that we thought something else was going to go down to stop the election. So we thought there'd be more to it than that.
I did too. I thought something would happen between November and January 20th. And things still feel kind of weird.
Unsettled.
Unsettled. Yeah. I don't know how to describe it. I think one thing that we're seeing is that the battle is far from over. As a matter of fact, it hasn't really begun. And, I think there's going to be here's what I believe that I'm seeing. We've been given with Trump's election this incredible window of opportunity to really, as the sovereign in America, we the people, collectively, we are the highest office in government. We've been given this great window of opportunity. The field has been cleared. It's like when floodwaters and come through and the river rushes over its banks and there's all kinds of destruction. And as it settles back down, the flotsam and the jetsam, that is all scattered everywhere, begins to make its way to the banks. And then the riverway opens up and it's cleared again. And that's what's happened. Like, we have a clear path, unmolested, to really step into our authority as the enforcers of our Constitution, as the highest office in government. So, you were saying at the beginning, and this was a big part of the Trump. I mean, this was one of the lines that during Trump's campaign that got the biggest applause. He said, I'm going to return power. I'm going to give America back to the people. And everybody's, oh, yeah. Well, it made me think about, you guys are familiar with the famous line from Benjamin Franklin, where he said, he was asked after the Constitution was finally drafted and sent out to the states. A lady in Philadelphia asked Benjamin Franklin, well, what have you given us, Dr. Franklin? Have you given us a monarchy, or have you given us a republic? And he said, a republic, madam, if you can keep it. And so that's where we are right now. I mean, like, we really have an opportunity to restore a lot of foundational principles about what our system of popular constitutionalism actually is, and to really restore sovereign authority and oversight of the people over our servants in government. We have an opportunity to restore that. But the problem is we don't know what that means. Like, we don't know. Let's just say hypothetically that Trump did have power to give America back to the people, which he doesn't. We didn't give the president that kind of power. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that he did. Like, he could just wrap it all up in a bow and put everybody in their right place and say, okay, here's America. Here's our republic. People, it's yours now. We the people take. I would ask, okay, what are you going to do with it?
That's the thing, Jeff. Well, I look at it like a tree. The tree has got all kinds of wild branches on it. He comes in, he prunes it out, gets it cleaned up, sets the stage where we could be. He takes out some of the roadblocks. That's what I'm looking at. He's eliminating some of the roadblocks. But
pruning that tree, isn't he? He's pruning that tree.
Right. But the problem is the foundation, the roots are rotted or not healthy enough to sustain.
Yeah. Well, I want to jump in here too, Jeff. I think a lot of people over the years, I'll be the first one to raise my hand and say, hey, I was right in that group. So many people, and Randy, you probably too, have been so busy for so many years or decades working, raising kids, building businesses, that as time went on, we didn't really realize all the things that were being taken from us. And just gradually, one by one by one, and pretty soon we've become slaves to the system. And now people think it's a great thing. We're going to be giving all this stuff back, when in fact it never should have been taken from us in the first place.
Yeah, you're so right. And, that was a part of my transition into giving myself to the mission of Tactical Civics. Is I realized exactly what you just described, that I had been content just to kind of live life, do the stuff that I enjoyed doing, give myself to different hobbies or projects or, whatever. I was working in the church and playing music and just, I was content to live my life and enjoy my nice things, while not really paying attention to what was going on. I mean, yeah, I paid attention ever since Reagan was president to election cycle politics. But, that had become such a, it was almost, well, it had become like a punchline on late night TV, which was corruption in government and, and politicians making their money from it. Yeah, it was like, yeah. But, the lights were on, the AC was working, cable was on, and the, cats were playing on TV Saturday, and life's good. So, yeah, let them be corrupt, but everything's okay. I'll do my own thing. And I got woken up, like a lot of us did in 2020. And I said, okay, that's no longer acceptable. That's an untenable way to live. I can't, because now I'm starting to see that there's more going on here than I was ever aware of. And something, and here's the thing. So, talking about pruning the tree and talking about, what Trump can and can't do. A lot of people have a lot of hope that he's going to fix most everything. And I just don't think people understand how deep organized crime runs in our federal government and how many trillions of dollars are at stake for a lot of very wealthy and powerful people that aren't just going to walk away from it. And I'm not sure that Trump even realizes how deep it goes. We have a new Secretary of Defense. This was wild. This just happened today. Okay, what is today? January 31st. No, 30th. January 30th. Today, we just had that terrible tragedy. Yeah, just awful, unimaginably awful. With the Black Hawk helicopter crashes into a commercial regional jet with 60 passengers on it. Our whole U.S. figure skating team was on there and coaches, and they're dead. And there were the national figure skating champion in Russia was on there. Is dead. Including 30, 40 other people. So Hegseth, our new Secretary of Defense, which, everybody loves him in the Patriot world. But guys, he made a comment today that I could not believe I heard.
And most people probably didn't catch it.
And most people didn't catch it. He said that helicopter was on a continuity of government mission. Now, what I'm going to share with you is that continuity of government doesn't mean what people think continuity of government means. So that is a phrase that has evolved since just after World War II. So there was an initiative in the Department of Defense and the Department of State called the Doomsday Project. All right. This was just after World War II. And kind of to highlight what the Doomsday Project was doing, it was covertly accumulating bureaucratic powers through the massive, and it was nothing then compared to what it is now, the massive administrative state, which is all illegal. It's absolutely illegal. And so the Department of Defense, through the Doomsday Project, is accumulating bureaucratic power. And they're kind of couching it and characterizing it as planning for disasters and emergencies. And that's just the guise that it was all under, was emergency planning for disasters, planning known inside and outside the government as the Doomsday Project, known more recently and misleadingly as continuity of government. So the Doomsday Project became COG, continuity of government. Okay, official. This is DoD policy. This is in their language, in their documentation. So COG planning, which was the Doomsday Project, under the guiding hands in the 1980s of Oliver North, Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney, and others, on 9/11 became the vehicle for a significant change of government. So what happened after 9/11 was all baked into what had been developing over 30 years prior, this continuity of government policy plan. That's all happening covertly. It's all happening in the shadows. It's all happening through the bureaucracy. So we experienced, after 9/11, incredibly repressive powers that were accumulated by the government under the guise of the Doomsday Project, COG. And they were developed at first to control the rest of the world, but now, to a pretty unprecedented extent, they were to control Americans. The Patriot Act. I mean, that was the biggest encroachment on our freedoms that we've had ever had up to that point. So Oliver North, whole Iran-Contra thing, he's talking to the Select Committee in Congress, and he says, we didn't lose the Vietnam War in Vietnam. We lost that war right here in this city. So the Doomsday Project, COG, picked up and expanded the Army's Operation Garden Plot, which were plans to deal with anti-war demonstrations and urban rioting, which had resulted after the Martin Luther King Jr. assassination and the creation of the Pentagon's so-called domestic war room. Now listen, this is wild. And in the domestic war room was the Directorate of Civil Disturbance and Planning Operations. So all of this big Department of Defense bureaucratic beast is growing. It's expanding. So the result of this COG planning, and all of it is being couched under continuity of government. So COG planning was the package of repressive mechanisms that were prepared over 2 decades by an elite COG planning group and then were implemented on 9/11. And that package included warrantless surveillance, which was put out in the open with Edward Snowden. 2, warrantless detention, including unprecedented abridgment of the right to habeas corpus. That all began at 9/11. 3, unprecedented steps toward the militarization of domestic security enforcement and shrinking of the posse comitatus. Posse comitatus is the prohibition that's put on the military to be involved in civilian domestic law enforcement. Military can't do that. One recent development, for example, has been the permanent deployment in the United States since 2008. Nobody knows this is going on. Since 2008, there's been a permanent deployment of a U.S. Army brigade combat team. Part of its directed assignment is to be, quote, called upon to help with civil unrest and crowd control. That's illegal. Many people seem to be unaware that Americans, you and me, together with that brigade, have lived since 2002 under a U.S. Army command called NORTHCOM. So when Hegseth is describing an operation that was under continuity of government, what he's describing is an illegal U.S. military operation, not training, a U.S. military operation on American soil. So that doesn't give me a ton of confidence that anyone in Washington right now, anyone appointed by Trump, sees the depth of evil that is concentrated in the Department of Defense and its military-industrial complex cronies.
So that's a little overwhelming. First of all, I'm trying to think how I could summarize that in my opinion. So what you're basically saying is that's just one example of them working outside the perimeters of the constitutional law. And, I'm going to throw out an example and you may get to it, but from what I understand, executive orders are illegal.
So back in, I think it was 1939, there was an act passed called something like Administrative Reorganization of the Executive Branch, or Administrative Reorganization Act. I think maybe it was called the Administrative Reorganization Act, the ARC. Maybe, I don't know exactly what it was called, but basically, it kind of gave initially the president the power to issue directives that were solely for members of the executive branch of government. Okay, so that was, and this is what always happens, is they use a little sleight of hand to get you to open the door, and they don't realize that you've got this bucket of water you're about to pour on their head. Mm-hmm. That's what the government does to us. It's like, they're punking us. and they're good at it. They're really good at punking us. And so they punk us with this Administrative Reorganization Act. And then that turns into what we've watched grow over. So that was, 1930, 39, I think it was. May have been in the 40s, but, past 80 years now, what we've watched happen is this impossible to comprehend. It's that massive, impossible to comprehend growth and expansion of administrative law and the administrative state. Hundreds of thousands of pencil-pushing bureaucrats whose jobs are by nature parasitic, that feed on the flesh of the hard work and production of everyday, ordinary Americans who go to work and do what it takes to keep things going. And so this massive administrative state is kind of embodied and symbolized with executive orders. So Trump makes an executive order that from now on, there will, I'm ending the Anchor Baby Act. And everybody just goes, yeah. And I just want to go, stupid, read the Constitution. The president does not have the power to, by executive fiat, make immigration law. He doesn't. That is a congressional power. We, the people, the highest office in government, gave our servants in Congress, in one of their 17 jobs, one of them was to make uniform rules of naturalization. So Congress is supposed to do the job of determining what is and what isn't an American citizen. And there's a principle in law that an amendment is not a repeal of the original. So, the 14th Amendment was written specifically to address children of slaves, and that those children had birthright citizenship, just like anyone else born to American citizens in America. And they use very specific and technical language talking about and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, about the qualification of being born in America. If you're born to some, and you have to be subject to the jurisdiction. Well, that's very specific because not everybody's subject to the jurisdiction of America. So, Trump is making all these executive orders, and a lot of them are going to get challenged, and a lot of them will probably be rendered void, moot. But that's not going to matter because that's not what his game is right now. His game is not to create law. His game is to communicate. He's putting on a show and a display. I'm going to do what I promised to do, but surely he understands that he doesn't have the power to make immigration law. Now, hopefully, what he communicated is a commitment to use the bully pulpit and veto power to make Congress get that right, which they need to do. They've got to get that right. So that's just one of many things that the executive branch has how it's accumulated power to itself. And here's the dark side of executive orders. Because of the nature of the administrative state as it is, with its ability to act in enforcement, act in legislatively, to write rules that absolutely dictate our lives as law, and to render judgment and issue penalties for violating those laws, because that's how it's treated. It's de facto law. And really, when you look at the whole scheme of it, it's a de facto new constitution that they've just written willy-nilly for themselves, ignoring the actual Constitution. And so when a president makes executive orders, there's a lot there because the administrative state is so powerful. I mean, it encroaches on our lives in very real and destructive ways. The administrative state has put people in prison, has shut down businesses, has created all kinds of chaos. And so the question is, and we've talked about this before. How did we get to this point? And there are a few inflection points that people aren't really aware of in American history that I think absolutely greased the skids that were built by Lincoln. When Lincoln, became the dictator in chief, and people don't realize this. Lincoln threw over half of the Maryland legislature in prison.
I did not know that.
Just threw them in prison because he thought that they were going to vote for secession. So he just had them all arrested and thrown in jail. I mean, it's crazy what Lincoln did to impose the raw power of the federal government and federal troops on the American people. So, Lincoln built the skids, but there are three things I believe that greased the skids for us to really just slide into hell. The first one is a guy and all these people, well, not all of them, two of the three are celebrated still in American culture. One is Horace Mann. Horace Mann is called the father of American education. Well, we've seen the child that sprung from his loins over the past 4 years. We have seen the insanity of our education system and the things that they are, the chaos, the mayhem that they are able to impose on families, on parents, on children, and their whole brainwashing and ideological, brainwashing system that they have. Well, Horace Mann in the early mid 1800s.
Let me add something. Don't forget, we have a teachers union that also, I don't know what you want to call it, that kind of forces the teachers into a certain agenda.
They absolutely. And the teachers union is a product of the structure of Horace Mann because, and I won't spend a long time on Horace Mann. He was in Massachusetts, and he was the first director of the Massachusetts State Board of Education. And that was the first kind of state board of education. And they actually went and got kids at the small end of a gun, making families send their kids to these government schools because people weren't complying. They said, no, we're not going to go. Well, Mann patterned his whole philosophy around public schooling on the model used in Prussia, which was, is Germany now, but formerly was Prussia. And the Prussian model of school was designed with the explicit, clear intent of creating soldiers. That's what they wanted. They wanted compliant, regimented, march in step, obey orders, don't question authority. That's what they wanted. They wanted that system because they needed to amass an army to pursue their ambition. And so Horace Mann went to Prussia and studied their system and brought it back to America. So that was inflection point number one. Inflection point number two happened about 60 years after Horace Mann. So Horace Mann was like in the 1830s, 40s, 50s. And then in the late 1800s, this guy named Francis Bellamy, and he has a brother in his name, I can't remember, who had written a fiction book that was kind of a utopian novel. Francis Bellamy was a Christian socialist. And he was a member of the Christian socialist movement, but he was a Unitarian. And Francis Bellamy started these socialist clubs all across America in schools. And the vision that Horace Mann had was to see one day where the American government would own the means of production, and that the schools would produce an army of young men for our labor force that upon graduation would be assigned to their place within what would become a flourishing and booming economy because of socialist ideas.
So I think you called it at one point what was it, an industrial army?
An industrial army, that's right. Yeah. An industrial army. That was his vision. So what people don't realize is every time they're at a basketball game or at a football game or at a Rotary Club meeting, and they stand up and put the heart on the hand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, they're reciting a pledge written by Francis Bellamy. Of course, he didn't have "under God" in his pledge. They're reciting a pledge written by Francis Bellamy, but you know the way that the pledge began in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Francis Bellamy gives the instruction, and he says, the children should stand straight with their heads high in the air. At an instruction from the principal, and there's a specific instruction that the principal gives, they'll lift their right hand level with their eyebrow near their forehead, so in a salute. And then upon another instruction from the principal, they will extend their right hand towards the flag. And I think you've got a picture of this, of happy little American school children. That's right, there they are. That's America, folks. That's the American flag that they're pointing at. And then they recite the Pledge of Allegiance. There they are.
Jeff, what year would this have been in approximately, give or take?
1898, 1900, 1901, 02, 03. So very late 19th century, and then into the early years of the 20th century. Well, guess who started copying the American pledge?
We didn't copy it after the Nazis.
No, the Nazis copied it after us.
Yep. Yep.
So for all those lunatic leftist progressives that just lost their minds when they saw Elon going, my heart goes out to you, and he extended his hand, and they said, he's making the Sieg Heil. He's a Nazi. See, he's a Nazi. They're all Nazis, and they were just foaming at the mouth. Somebody should tell him, no, he's just being a good American. Just like every little school child in 1898, 1900, 1910 were doing every morning in school. They were making this gesture towards the American flag.
So the media twisted it to a point that they never wanted to include. He was basically throwing his heart out to the people.
Oh, no. They're not going to show you the truth. They don't get paid to show you the truth.
But the media used to really like Elon 2 or 3 years ago. They thought he was great. And now that he's come to the right side, they're like, all of a sudden, he's not the best guy that he was.
Well, let's take a look at it and let people judge for themselves.
The media used to swoon on Donald Trump. I mean, they couldn't get enough of Donald Trump until he ran for president.
Exactly.
Well, let's take a quick clip of Elon doing this, and you tell me if you think that he is doing with a Sieg Heil.
Let's see what Elon's doing here.
You know, there are elections that come and go. Some elections are, important. Some are not. But this one, this one really mattered. And I just want to say thank you for making it happen. Thank you. My heart goes out to you. It is thanks to you.
So that's a guy that's a little awkward on the stage.
Yeah. He's a little awkward on stage in front of thousands of people at a political rally, giving, a little bit out of his element. He's not talking about tech. He's not talking about entrepreneurialism or he's not talking about thinking outside the box and in tech and development and, all of that. He's talking to a group of just ordinary Americans who voted Trump into office, and he's saying, thank you. He goes, You know, he just,
To you all.
yeah, he just slings his arm out like that, not thinking about what he's doing. Or he could have been, you know, he could have been scouring the internet and come across Francis Bellamy. And
I was going to say, he's so smart. He's like, I'm going to do the Bellamy Pledge right now. I'm going to emulate this right here, right now.
I'm going to do it the way that it was written.
He probably tapped into AI like 6 minutes before he went on stage and like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to follow this exact script. So.
Or it could have been, you know, it could have been one of those genius judo moves that, you know, that where he was hoping, you know, I hope people use this as an opportunity to actually identify one of the inflection points that led America off the rails into socialism and really communism. All 10 planks of communism are active in the American government. That's in American life. That's a fact. And so maybe in his genius, he said, yeah, I'm just going to kind of give a hint and make people start looking and searching. And maybe they'll come across one of the inflection points, Francis Bellamy, starting all these socialist clubs, training little children to be compliant, don't question authority, do what you're told, stand up straight, salute, honor, sit down.
Announce that we're having our first ever mega sale on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save over 50% on this season's flannel sheets. Queen size only $59.98. Kings only $69.98. They sell out fast every year, so order now. Save 20% on our brand new My Crosses. They're designed in the likeness of the one I've worn every day for over 20 years. They come in men's and women's, and they're made right here in the USA. Get our 2025 six-piece My Towel sets for only $29.98. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, just $14.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our first ever mega sale. But wait, remember that $75 free shipping rule? Well, that ship is sale because right now, every order ships absolutely free.
That's that now. You'd be lucky if the school says the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, they don't say the Pledge of Allegiance, but now they're doing far worse. They're not teaching them anything. They're not teaching them how to read. They're not teaching them how to write. There are states in America right now where overwhelming majority of students can't read at grade level.
Well, we're right in the Kansas City metro area, and we had the president, wasn't Randy? The president of the teachers union of the Kansas City, Missouri Public Schools was on our show here a few months ago, and he was talking about how now their school district had adopted no more zeros. You cannot give kids zeros for anything. The minimum, I think, was it 40%?
They get 40% if they don't even show up.
You sleep in every day, and you still get a 40%. And he was explaining how it's so much easier to take a kid from 40% to 60%, which is somewhat, sort of, kind of passing. But no more zeros. And I'm like, this is absolute crazy town.
Yeah, it's life is a participation trophy. And that's what it's become. And they're not learning anything. But actually, the truth is they're learning a lot.
Well, and my question is, how can public school teachers today or public school administrators defend this? Are they doing it just to ride out their contracts, to get their retirement? I mean, why do they seem to be so silent and they won't speak up, or they don't want to come on shows? It's just it's mind-boggling to me because it's their kids' future and their grandkids' future what they're actually spurring on. So I have a hard time with that.
Well, human nature is such, and Jefferson got this right when he said, all experience hath shown that humanity is prone to suffer so long as evils are sufferable. And, the reality is, maybe their kids' future, maybe their grandkids' future, but human nature is, unless there's a controlling influence on your heart, is that the future you're going to be most concerned with is your own. And so, they've invested the whole trajectory of their lives into being public school teachers and getting summers off and having what they hope they can depend on is a really good pension when they retire. And so they have a really deep and subconscious motivation to not allow that to be destroyed or challenged or changed. I mean, people don't like change anyway, unless you're a wet baby.
Right.
You just don't like it. And, so, my dad was a school teacher. And by all accounts, to this day, I'll have people tell me, I had your dad for math in the 8th grade. He changed my life. I hated math and I was flunking out. But when I had him, he made it fun. And I actually learned something. I loved your dad. And he was a great guy. And so, I know a lot of great people who are school teachers, but they exist within a system that has a value set that doesn't have anything to do with education. The worldview and the value set that governs the Department of Education is not education. It's something completely different. Inflection point 3 in America. And this is this one, maybe this is probably one of the most profound. I mean, this is where we were kind of to the edge of the cliff. There was still a chance of coming back, and then somebody came up and kicked us over, and that happened in more in the late 19th century, late 19th century, early 20th century. And prior to that, I want to share something that Nietzsche, who was a famous German philosopher, who observed that Western culture was abandoning God. And as a matter of fact, Nietzsche said it was famous for saying God is dead. But that wasn't a triumphant proclamation that he was making. It was an observation and kind of a prediction. He said, God is dead, and we have killed him with our own hands. And then he said, and there's not enough water to wash away the blood. And so, and he observed, Nietzsche had a statement. He said that the modern bourgeois, so, we're talking about the well-to-do, the educated, the professional class, the doctors, the lawyers, the teachers, the business owners, that they had traded the daily newspaper for the daily prayer. And so what that meant was that the petty, the simple, the transigent took the place of the eternal and the ephemeral and the transcendent. And so Western culture is on this trajectory. And the question that we've not been willing to ask is, the values that were brought to us by the revolution that began with the gospel of Jesus Christ, that changed the course of human history. It altered the course of human history forever and for good. And Western culture and our foundation of English common law, of equality under the law, of blind justice, is all the result of the Christian worldview. Patrick Henry, said it can't be emphasized too often or too strongly that this great nation was founded not by religionists, but by Christians. They're not the same. And not by religion, but by the gospel of Jesus Christ. And when you look in our history, that is an irrefutable fact. And anybody that tries to say otherwise is either deceived, stupid, or they have an agenda. And so, but it didn't all happen at once. The generation of Lincoln, of Karl Marx, of Darwin, that generation was abandoning God and was saying, we don't need God. We don't need to follow. We don't need the wisdom of God. We adopted the philosophy that had existed for thousands of years that came from the lips of Democritus, who was a Greek philosopher. And he didn't exactly say these words, but this is kind of how it's been distilled. He said basically that man is the measure of all things. And so that's what we embraced in Western culture, that man could be the measure of all things. Well, problem is that if you start with a crooked stick, you'll never know what a straight stick is, and you'll never know how crooked that stick is unless you set it beside an actually straight stick. And when we abandon the wisdom of God, when we abandon the principles of the gospel of Jesus Christ, we left the straight measuring line and we substituted it with a crooked line. And that's what's been our standard. And what's been proven is that man is actually not a very good measure. Man is actually a destructive measure. And that's why we need the wisdom of God. That's why we need the law of God. What does the scripture say? It says the law is a tutor that brings us to freedom. Where's freedom found? Freedom found in Christ. The law of liberty. That's how things were supposed to be in America. That's how things were designed. But the third inflection point that was predicted by Nietzsche, it didn't happen during Nietzsche's time, but he saw it coming. And Nietzsche suggested that we could build our own value system. But the real question is, can you retain the values that were brought to Western culture through the revolution of the gospel of Jesus Christ while abandoning the person of Jesus Christ? Could you just hang on to the values and abandon the living presence of the eternal Son of God? And the clear answer to that question is no, you cannot. John Dewey, everybody's heard of the Dewey Decimal System, right? So Dewey was probably the most influential educator and educational philosophers of the 20th century. And he did more to shape American education than any other person. Listen to what Dewey said. Dewey described his view of progressive education, and he coined the term progressive education. This was in the 1920s. Dewey described it this way: the human journey is constitutive of its own meaning. He knew who Democritus was, and he understood this philosophy that man was the measure of all things. So he's describing it here in fancy language. The human journey is constitutive of its own meaning. So we can extract our own meaning completely independent of the source of being and life, which is God the Father, and is not to be rescued by any transcendent explanations, principles of accountability, or posthumous salvation. Now think about what he just said there. You make your own rules, and there's not going to be some accountability for the rules that you make and the choices that you live by. There's not going to be some accountability you're going to face after you die, nor will there be some posthumous salvation for the things that you did wrong. You make the rules here and now, and then you turn into dirt, and that's it. That's all there is. I'll just read a little bit about Dewey, and this will kind of paint. This will explain how we've gotten to where we are right now in American education, and how we've been allowed to teach the insanity that we've been teaching. That we're telling little boys and girls they can decide on their own whether they're little boys or girls. That's really happening in American schools. And we're telling pubescent, juvenile young girls, 13, 14, 15 years old, that they can become boys if they want to, and we will pay for you to have your breasts cut off. We have states right now in America that are paying for that. We have school systems that are operating by the ESG curriculum model, ESL, emotional social learning.
Social emotional learning.
Well, there's so many ESGs, environmental social governance, social emotional learning. I mean, there's so many of these nonsensical three-letter agencies.
It makes you emotionally unstable.
Yeah.
But they're teaching that, and they're also preventing parents that they believe would not support their little Sally's decision that she's going to be little Sammy. they're hiding it from them. And it all goes into a database. And that database is used as a control measure to impose legal sanctions on parents that don't support. That's happening in states in America. And here's where it begins. For John Dewey, who was the most influential educator in American history, there was no room for a traditional God, a single being responsible for the physical and moral universe and its inhabitants. Belief in God was neither warranted nor advisable. With dogma and creed excluded, immutable and unchangeable truth was effectively dead and buried, especially as a reference point for human development. There was no room for fixed natural law or permanent moral absolutes. That became the worldview of American education. What I just read through the work of John Dewey and his vast influence. He began in Chicago.
That's where it
Vast
started
influence.
in Chicago. That's why he was so whacked, probably. I mean, how could he not be coming from that town?
And so, you've heard me say this before, guys. Spiritual problems are incredibly resistant to non-spiritual solutions. And until I really believe that the body of Christ, the church in America, is really America's only hope. People living under a deep conviction and their hearts under the influence of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Our system of government, popular constitutionalism, was born in American pulpits. It wasn't born in the writings of John Locke. It wasn't born in the writings of Montesquieu. Our system of popular constitutionalism was born in American pulpits between 1663 and 1776. It was pastors in America who could quote Locke, they could quote Cicero, they could quote Thucydides. They were well educated. They crafted and shouted a vision of liberty, of people being the origin of governing authority and power, because God had vested it in the people to do. They painted the vision of that, and it was their vision of all these pastors. There's a long list of them, of pamphlets that were holding influence over colonial America and that kept the flames of liberty burning when they looked like they might kind of trickle out. And we have to return. The church in America has to decide that A, they're going to stop waiting to get to heaven, that B, they're going to stop ignoring politics and embracing civic duty and the ability to present a compelling vision of what we're supposed to be, and then to assume the deep and august duty that is on we the people to enforce the law that we created to govern our servants in government. We're the only ones that can do it. And we have an opportunity right now. I've talked to a lot of people that have said, well, if I get involved with tactical civics, what if I get doxxed? I mean, like if, what if I get doxxed? What if the government comes after me? Well, maybe that was a legitimate fear 4 years ago. I didn't care. I was like, let them come. We're standing on solid ground. But now, church in America, the field's been cleared. We've got free run. Like right now is the time for the church in America and for we the people in America to do their duty and to restore the rule of law, especially the rule of our Constitution on our servants in government and return America to a true system of popular constitutionalism where the Constitution really does reign in its proper place as the supreme law of the land, just like we said that it was going to be.
Go ahead.
I just see so few pastors doing anything along this line, and I feel like so many more are never going to go down that path because it's too politically charged. And to me, that's a concern. I mean, we could count. We've had half a dozen pastors on our show, Randy, that think like you do. But even they say, they've been ostracized, they've been booted out of local pastoral groups in the Kansas City area, just for speaking hardcore truth, not really political.
Just trying to tell people the truth. Yeah.
Not really political on one side or the other. Just here's the truth, here's the law, here's the Constitution. But a lot of them we're just going to keep doing what we're doing, and we don't want to alienate our congregation or our tax status or our tithes or our membership, and that's a problem in my opinion.
Well, I tell you what, we have this new program that is based on the book that our founder, David Zuniga, wrote called Now When We Rise. And I can see it, I can see the church in America rising. Maybe not necessarily the church that lives within the four walls that are being overseen by cowardly pastors, but the body of Christ in America, many who have walked out of the church, who still love God, still have a heart to follow Christ. But what they found in the church is, that the church has become nothing more than vendors of religious goods and services, but not people on mission. And so this new program that we've got, I wrote 11 content for 11 videos. So it's an 11-week small group study that people can just do in their homes. You can call some friends together, call some folks that you've gone to church with, or just people in your own church. Say, hey, come over. I think there's something that might really, really resonate with you. And this study is on American civics, but from the perspective of the obligation and calling that the body of Christ has always had in America from the very beginning to be the voice of God's law that is made manifest in our Constitution. This whole concept of rule by law and of just law, blind justice, equality under the law, all of that is a Christian idea. It's not any other idea but a Christian idea. And pastors in the 17th and 18th century defended it regularly. They used to preach. There's a whole body of work called election sermons. And it's time for the body of Christ to do that. It's time for the body of Christ to say, God, here I am. Show me what to do. Because there's a real mission that can literally change the face of America and potentially the world, and be a spark of revival, of real revival, where people reclaim a sense of real mission here and right now, to see justice prevail. What does the scripture say that God requires? To do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. And it's only people whose hearts are under the influence of the gospel of Jesus Christ who can do that, who can do justice while loving mercy. Because to ignore the rule of law is as unjust as a situation as we could possibly be in. But to do justice is a merciful act. One, because it sets victims free of oppression and restores their lives to peace. And it also, doing justice, gives those who are servants, especially in government, who break and violate the law, it gives them an opportunity to repent and to own up to what they've done. And so we have to do justice. And I believe that it's the people whose hearts are under the influence of the gospel of Jesus Christ that are uniquely equipped to do what needs to be done because we are the ones through whom God gave this republic its birth. It was through the people of God. And I think you've got a bumper that for our new series. And I'm on the finishing touches of production right now. We're going to be having meetings real soon to talk about a rollout, and we're going to equip all of our members with a plan, a strategic plan on how to take this to pastors, on how to take this to fellow church members, on how to take this to Christians that they know that have kind of felt ostracized and disconnected from the church, but still have a heart to serve God. And we're going to roll this out, and it's really, really close to all being wrapped up and finished. And then we're going to begin our plan of
You want to
delivery.
give a quick 2-minute overview of Tactical Civics? If you join some of the resources, I mean, there's an endless amount of resources and learning material.
It's really easy to join. You just go to TacticalCivics.com and you'll see me there. And I give about a 12-minute overview of our mission. And then you can just click the join button, $5 a month. And you will immediately be greeted by just a really short orientation session that our Chief Administrative Officer, Brad Boardman, wrote, and I recorded and produced for our new website. And it'll walk you through exactly what we're doing, like what our strategic plan is. And when you get finished with that, I promise you that you're going to go, wow, this can work. All it needs is we, the people, to amass together, working in unified fashion to accomplish this mission and restore the rule of law and restore our authority to enforce it. And that's really what we're doing. We're calling people back to God because we believe we're under God's judgment. That's why things have been the way they are. And I don't believe that God's judgment has ended yet. Trump is not the savior. Mm-hmm. Trump is not the end of God's judgment on America. Trump is an opportunity. And I do believe it's an opportunity by the grace of God that we have right now, and we had better take advantage of it. And so that's what we're doing. And the goal of Tactical Civics is to restore the rule of law. We, the people, are the only ones stipulated in the Constitution with the authority to enforce it. Mm-hmm. And we have not done that for 200 years or more. And we need to do that. And so we want to restore our primordial institutions of law enforcement that have always belonged to the people. We've just kind of let go of them, but they still exist. They're still enumerated in the Constitution, clear, plain English. That's our grand jury system and constitutional militia. And then we want to restore representation because we don't have it right now in America. We have 435 people pretending to represent, on average, 750,000 people. That's not representation. And that's not what the founders intended. So we're going to restore that. George Washington fought for that. That was the only issue that he actually stood up and said something about in the Constitutional Convention, was the promise and guarantee of small representative districts. That's been gone. And so now we have representatives that are puppets of, corporations. And then we want to bring Congress home and make them work from their home districts, make our senators work in our state capitals so that we can oversee their work. Look, Amendment 9 and 10, we the people reserved some pretty awesome authority and power to ourselves. In Amendment 9, we said the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights should not be taken to deny or constrain other rights not mentioned. So you think of a right, it's ours. We only mentioned a few of them, but any right that you can think of that we have, we reserve to ourselves. And then in the 10th Amendment, we said anything that we didn't delegate to Congress, specific job that we gave Congress to do in the Constitution, and anything we didn't prohibit the states and the people doing, return to the states and the people respectively. So we retain power, we reserve unlimited rights that we just happen to mention a few of them in the Constitution. And so we need to do what we're authorized to do, and we need to get busy. Right now's the time. It's now or never. Like, the opportunity's there. For the next 4 years, there's no limit to what we can do if we will do it.
We got to get on it. And Jeff, I think I was looking over some of your information before you came on. We were talking about the expansion of federal agencies and how they're all these unelected bureaucrats. There's like 559 to 1 as far as 559 unelected regulation writing bureaucrats to 1 elected official, which, Randy, that's some pretty significant. That's just exponentially too high.
Yeah, it just shows the not corruption per se, but it just shows how the system's watered down.
Well, Jeff, real quick, can we play this bumper that Randy has we're talking about?
Now, when we rise, the Great Reset, underway in all 50 states, training and organizing we the people to glorify Jesus Christ and stop our criminal servants before they destroy America. Small group video series written and produced by Jeff Calhoun, based on the book by David M. Zuniga, a Tactical Civics production.
So, Jeff, if people want more, they can go to TacticalCivics.com and find all your information. They can join. What is the cost to be a member on an annual basis?
It's a venti at Starbucks, about $5 a month.
I think most people. I don't go to Starbucks. I refuse, but I can. I think I can.
I don't either. Yeah, just any frou-frou drink that you get that's going to cost you $5. Give that up once a month, and that's all it's going to take to. I mean, look. Every one of us blows $5 on something stupid every month. So just don't do that one time. And that's all it costs to join. And it's cheaper if you join annually. You can join annually for $50 a year. This is not a money-making operation. This is a mission to America to restore popular constitutionalism and the rule of law. And
I think what he just said, this is not a money-making operation either, Andy. This is a mission to America, what we're doing too, right?
That's exactly what this is.
I haven't seen this being a money-making mission yet.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Some days the world just changes, and we can't see around the bend, but I believe that around the bend is going to be an era of incredible peace and incredible prosperity and production in America, because we're going to set people free to do what God has given them life to do. We're going to set people free to pursue dreams, to build, to produce, to solve problems, to make the world a better place. But we have to restore our rule of law in order to do that, and hold our servants accountable.
I love it. I think that's what we need to start with, Randy. Hold them all. Just get those people out of office and get those unelected bureaucrats out of the way, and we'll be on the right path, getting back to where we need to be for we the people. Jeff, what's one good piece of actionable parting advice you'd like to leave us and our viewers today?
First thing is just pray. There's one prayer that God will always answer. Stop for a moment and stop, pointing out this problem and pointing out that problem, and just simply and wishing that your enemies would die and blow up, which we all at times wish would happen. But just stop for a second and say, search my heart, God. Try me and know my anxious thoughts, and see if there be any hurtful way in me. Show me where, I need to improve. Show me where, we update our phones, we update our computers, we update our Rokus, but sometimes this needs to be updated. And for far too long, many people in America are not updating their inner life. And we've got to do business with God. So that's the first thing that I would tell people to do, is pray, and then ask God, what do you want me to do?
Yep.
Perfect. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for joining us again here on Patriots with Grit. Again, people can go to your site at TacticalCivics.com, sign up for either an annual or monthly membership, $60 a year, $50 a year annually. So we just want to say thanks so much for sharing knowledge and sharing truth. One more time, what's the name of the book?
Now When We Rise. And if you join, you can download the PDF version for free. And it's about, I think it's $8 on Amazon. Now When We Rise, by David M. Zuniga.
Well, that's just a large, whatever those frilly drinks are at Amazon or at Starbucks, $8 a month. So I think people can afford that or the monthly or annual membership. So Jeff, thanks so much for being on here again. We appreciate this, and just keep spreading truth.
Appreciate what you're doing.
Well, keep at it, and so will you, my friend. Take care. There's 3 types of gases in the body: oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nitric oxide. Cardio Miracle is your advanced formula nitric oxide booster and provides you essential support for increased vitamin D3 and blood flow and oxygen, cellular health and reproduction, improved cardiovascular health, enhanced energy and clarity, and it supercharges your sexual stamina. So start reclaiming your health today and increase your energy, stamina, and focus. Go to cardiomiracle.com, enter discount code GRIT. That's cardiomiracle.com, discount code GRIT. Take advantage of this awesome product and start feeling better today. cardiomiracle.com, discount code GRIT. Thanks for watching another exciting episode of Patriots with Grit. We want to keep you informed, so if you would, just go over to patriotswithgrit.com and give us your first name and your email so we can keep you up to date. Also, be sure to subscribe, like, and share so we can keep bringing you truth. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.